dealt with in a subdiscipline of philosophy, which is anthropology. And it is a discipline within philosophy which is not as well established as ontology, epistemology, or ethics. It's a little bit in between empirical studies on the one hand, right? I mean, what is a human being can be answered also in a biological treatise, obviously. And on the other hand, let's say the normatively guided question also of what a human being should be and which universals, if you want, are present in human beings. So in ancient Greece, one of the key necessary conditions for being a human being then was to dispose of the capacity to reason. Yeah. And reasoning obviously is a normative notion already. Yeah. It's not something that biologists would use in terms of their naturalistic terminology. And you already get an idea of the strange status this discipline has in between the natural sciences and philosophy, the descriptive and the normative. Yeah. In that discipline, then, you also have different kind of approaches to this question of what a human being is, and more relevant here for the 20th century and of that philosophical tradition of anthropology in Germany was a social environmentalist approach, right? So that whatever a human being is dependent on the way the social life is organized, let's say, and they coexisted always with a certain toying with ideas of biological determinism, so that biological needs are in a way universal and also describe human beings. And this philosophical anthropology is a bit in between these different positions. So there are universal needs, but there's also this influence of the social organization. A very important definition of what the human being is, according to that tradition, then is that human beings are active, cognizing beings, right? So in sociological terms, we would say these theories presuppose a very strong notion of actorhood. So they're more on the side of actors than perhaps structures. So what is then the more concrete underlying anthropology of the social construction of reality? And here I refer mainly to the works of Arnold Gehlen, who is cited also a lot by Birger Luttmann. And if you want to read a very informative introduction to that entire intellectual school, if you want, then I can recommend this, unfortunately, German publication. So human beings, in Arnold Gehlen's view, are first of all not complete human being. They're biologically incomplete. There is a biological component, we heard that, but biology alone does not determine human beings. And this may be seen already by the fact that we are born prematurely. Yeah, so we are basically, we cannot survive in our first year of our lives. We are dependent already in this first year and even beyond on our parents, on social institutions, on the community. And secondly, we are also underdetermined in the sense that we do not have instincts that make our actions unavoidable, right? So yeah, we do have certain mechanistic traits in our bodies. Yeah, so for instance, breathing is something that works automatically and we can stop it, but this is basically determined physiologically. But this does not hold for the realm of potential actions and movements that we can do, they are not determined by instincts alone. In short, we have a choice. Yeah. That is, we are determined by our bodily needs, right? We need to satisfy certain material needs in order to thrive. So the Gehlen anthropology does support what I would call a weak materialism in that sense. And there's even a priority of the more material needs that we have, right? We first have to eat and then we can think about art. But this is also only just a weak materialism. So something also very important for Gehlen is, and this is in a way the Hobbesian Thomas Hobbes kind of tradition of the security problem in societies. Lacking instincts, we are also lacking inhibitions. Yeah, so basically there's no check on, for instance, us using intraspecies violence. Yeah, intraspecies violence exists also among other species, but it is a rather rare phenomenon. It can easily happen among human beings. So intraspecies murder, for instance, is always lurking, in this Hobbesian world. There's always a potential security problem. Almost any human being has the capacity to commit an intraspecies murder, right? So your neighbor could be your murderer, and there is this problem of security emerging. There's also, again, another kind of uncertainty, not just the security problem. There's also an uncertainty problem in the sense that our senses are also, due to the lack of instincts, sort of open towards the world. So we are in a state of world openness. We are overflowing with perceptions. And basically, there's no instinct that would, for instance, tell us this is basically a hunting day. There's only hunting to be done, and we know exactly what to do. But there is what Arnold Gehlen calls, in a way, an unspecific directedness towards the world. Therefore, and this is going towards now Gehlen's theory of institutions, we are in a dire need for social order, and we have an innate desire for external support. In parentheses, always here, Gehlen's original terms, which also made it into Burger-Luckmann a little bit. So we need institutions for a couple of reasons. First reason is simply we have to solve the security problem. A second one is that biologically we are underdetermined, so we need institutions to replace what nature basically has forgotten to equip us with. And third of all, we need also just perceptionally a certain limitation of our world openness that goes sort of in any direction. So in a way, for all of these reasons, institutions basically create an artificial social environment to replace the incomplete natural one, and that allows us to create a kind of background stability and security. Hintergrunderfüllung is the German term that allows human societies to flourish. And yes, so in a way, this is a theory that anthropologizes or naturalizes, if you want, a need for institutions in human nature, such that institutions are, in a functional answer to the problem of order that nature left us with. And you may already hear also a certain functionalist kind of allusions being made here in this theory. And this approach also shares with functionalism the problem of a certain, let's say, status quo bias. And you may already notice that there's a certain law and order approach lurking here, because if you want any social order, right, even a very rigid law and order based order is probably better in Galen's view than no order at all. So in a way, you could say even a fascist order would fulfill the functional requirement of social order, even though it's perhaps not an ethically justified one. And this position of Galen's had raised obviously a lot of critique, in particular after fascism in the 1950s and 60s. And as one of the results, I wanted to mention this also famous debate between Gehlen and Theodor W. Adorno, one of the grandfathers of the Frankfurt School, which you can also find here under this YouTube link, and which I recommend you to watch. Not as a coincidence, perhaps, many of these philosophical anthropologists, above all Gehlen, had a certain leaning towards, let's say, conservatism and fascism. Gehlen's brother is known for being sort of the foreign security chief under the Nazi period for Eastern territories, so the occupied Soviet territories, and was installed by the Americans as the founder of the German CIA, the BND. So yeah, there was this is a very conservative approach, and you should be aware also of that context. But yeah, it is the approach that underlies the sociology of knowledge, as then represented by Burger-Luckmann. And yeah, so knowledge is obviously a phenomenon that, again, is a very philosophical one, with debates ever since Plato about what is actually knowledge, the classical answer being it's justified true belief in Plato's Meno dialogue. Yes, philosophers argue whether this is a good definition or not, and what it means for us to acquire knowledge, right? This is the discipline also of epistemology. In sociology, then, the more prevalent question is not what is knowledge, right? Knowledge is probably mostly what human societies then define as such, but it's rather interesting to look at how knowledge is distributed across various strata in a functionally differentiated society, and how it is produced, and also which consequences it has, right? In the Chicago School, we had the Thomas theorem, where what people think knowledge is may have real consequences. And this is, let's say, the more interesting aspect for sociology about the phenomenon of knowledge. In a functionally differentiated society, then also, the kind of organization of knowledge is different when compared to the traditional segmented kind of societies. Yeah, so Berger and Luckmann talk about the provinces of meaning. So if you work in a very specialized working environment, right, as a sociologist, then you have a very specialized body of knowledge that is difficult to communicate to others who work in very different specialized environments. And in that way, the functional differentiation of society has its reflection also on the epistemic side of things, so that is how knowledge then is compartmentalized and distributed in society. And you see already certain parallels, right? Every kind of feature that characterize the functionally differentiated or segmented societies in these two-stage models of 19th century sociology has, in a way, its reflection also in the sociology of knowledge, where when